There comes a moment in every parent's life, quiet, often unexpected, when we look into our child's eyes and sense something deeper than the present. It's not just their smile, their silence, or their stubbornness. It's a feeling, subtle but persistent, that this child has come carrying something, a weight, a purpose, a mirror. And in that stillness, a thought arises. Did my child come to teach me, not just to learn from me? In the teachings of the Buddha, there is a gentle truth often overlooked. Our children may be the echo of our own unfinished lessons. They arrive not as blank slates, but as souls on a journey, deeply intertwined with our own. If you've ever felt a quiet pull in your heart as you watched your child struggle, question, or grow distant, this reflection is for you. Stay with me. What we're about to explore may shift how you see your child and yourself forever. We're often told that children are born innocent, pure, and untouched by the world. And in many ways, they are. But what if we looked beyond the surface of that innocence, not to doubt it, but to understand it more deeply? In the quiet corners of Buddhist thought, there's a truth that rarely gets spoken aloud. Every child enters this world not as a blank slate, but as a soul already in motion. Their arrival is not a beginning, but a return. Just as the river meets the ocean and becomes part of something larger, each child steps back into life carrying threads from lifetimes we cannot see. Perhaps you've sensed it before. Maybe your child, or even your grandchild, seemed unusually thoughtful for their age, or deeply emotional without an obvious cause. Maybe they were drawn to silence more than noise, or asked questions too big for their little voice. And you paused, because something in them felt familiar, as if they had been here before. In the teachings of the Buddha, life is a continuum, not a straight line. We are shaped not just by what happens in this life, but by the echoes of lives already lived. Children are not born randomly. They are born where their karma calls them into the arms of the parents who hold the next step in their soul's journey. This doesn't mean that we as parents are responsible for everything they carry, but it does mean we are part of their healing, their remembering, and sometimes even their liberation. And just as they carry karma, they can awaken ours. Think of a child not as a page to be written on, but as a sacred letter already written, sealed in silence, and delivered into your life. Your role is not to erase and rewrite, but to slowly read, understand, and honor the ink that is already there. When we see our children through this lens, something softens in us. The pressure to mold them into who we think they should be begins to fade. Instead, we start to ask, what has this soul come here to remember? What has it returned to heal? And just like that, parenting becomes less about control and more about presence, less about fixing and more about witnessing. And perhaps, in witnessing them, we begin to witness ourselves. If this reflection speaks to something quiet inside you, if you've ever looked at your child and felt they were more than just yours, then I invite you to continue this journey with me. What we uncover in the next moments may not only change the way you see your child, but the way you see your own heart. Once we begin to see our children not as blank pages, but as souls returning with stories untold, something else becomes clear the moment they arrive. The very season, the very month of their birth is not accidental. In the stillness of Buddhist thought, Time is never neutral. Each moment carries its own vibration, its own lesson, its own invitation. And so, the month your child was born is more than a date on the calendar. It is a karmic signature, one written long before their first breath, echoing from lifetimes past. There is a quiet wisdom in nature's cycles. Spring brings renewal. Summer brings intensity. Autumn brings letting go. And winter draws us inward. In the same way, each month carries a spiritual tone, a kind of karmic atmosphere that surrounds the soul as it re-enters this world. If your child was born in a month of stillness, their soul may be seeking clarity, retreat, or emotional resolution. If they arrived in a season of blooming, perhaps they returned to heal something about giving, receiving, or growing what was once withheld. And if they were born during times of loss or harvest, maybe their soul is balancing old debts, emotional, energetic, or even ancestral. It may seem hard to believe, but think back to the time when your child was born. Not just the date, but how you felt in that season. Was life stable or uncertain? Were you joyful or quietly struggling? The emotional weather of that month wasn't separate from the child. It was part of the soul's preparation. Karma isn't only what the child carries. It's what the child walks into. And perhaps most humbling of all, the month of their arrival may not only reflect their karma, it may awaken yours. In Buddhist tradition, time is not measured in hours or years. It's measured in awareness. So we look not at when something happened, but what that moment held. The month becomes a doorway. The soul chooses to walk through it at a very specific time, not because it's convenient, but because it's necessary. This changes how we look at our children's beginnings. Instead of asking, "What does their birth chart say?" we might ask, "What was that month asking of my soul too?" Because their entrance is never just theirs. It's ours, too. Shared, timed, sacred. When we understand this, we begin to see birth not just as an arrival, but as a return home, timed by the rhythm of something far deeper than we could plan. And with that comes a softness. We stop resenting the challenges that came with their arrival. We stop wishing it had happened earlier or later. And we start trusting that it came exactly when it needed to. If this reflection has opened something in you, I'd love to know, what was the season of your child's birth? Did it come during joy, loss, or something in between? Let me know in the comments. Your presence here matters. Thank you for walking this path with me. As we begin to understand that a child's soul arrives with its own timing and karmic weight, another truth gently rises to the surface. Our children are not extensions of us. They are not here to become what we could not be. They are not blank slates waiting for our corrections, nor mirrors of our achievements. They are mirrors, but of something deeper, of the very parts of ourselves we've forgotten, avoided, or buried. In this karmic relationship, our children do not just inherit our genetics. They reflect our wounds, our blind spots, and sometimes our most silent hopes. Have you ever found yourself confused by your child's behavior, not because it's bad, but because it touches something unspoken within you? A sudden anger, a deep sadness, a longing you thought was gone. Maybe your child's quietness makes you uncomfortable, or their questions feel too close to truths you've never fully faced. This is not coincidence. In Buddhist teachings, karma is not just action, it is reflection. Your child stands not only before you, but for you, mirroring the places within you that still seek healing. This can be confronting. Many of us spent years trying to move on from our past, thinking it was behind us. But karma has a way of circling back not to punish, but to finish what was left undone. And often, it returns in the form of a child who says or does something that opens a doorway we'd long shut. In those moments, we have a choice to react from habit or to respond from awareness. Understanding this changes the parenting journey entirely. Instead of shaping our children, we begin to listen to them, not just with our ears, but with our hearts. We watch for the parts of them that stir something in us, not to judge, but to ask, "What are you showing me about myself?" When a child resists control, perhaps they're mirroring the control we never allowed ourselves to release. When they fear abandonment, maybe they echo the part of us that still grieves being left behind. And when they act out, they may be acting out what we silently carry. There's deep humility in this view. It calls us not to fix our children, but to sit beside them, and in doing so, to sit beside ourselves. Our children are not here to become who we wish we were. They are here to help us see who we really are. And through that seeing, something sacred happens. The karma begins to shift, soften, and eventually dissolve. If you've ever seen yourself reflected in your child in ways that surprised or unsettled you, you're not alone. Parenting is not just an act of raising another. It is a spiritual invitation to meet the parts of yourself that have waited in silence. If this perspective speaks to your experience, I invite you to share it in the comments. What have your children mirrored back to you? And if this message is bringing you deeper peace and awareness, don't forget to subscribe to Awakening Insights, a space where reflections like these are honored, shared, and gently explored. You are not just parenting a child. You are walking your soul home. There comes a moment, often not loud, not dramatic, when a parent begins to sense that their child did not simply come into their life, but arrived with a message, not in words, not in actions, but in being. A quiet presence that slowly, persistently asks us to see more, feel more, become more aware. In Buddhist teachings, this moment is not random. It is a soft knock from karma itself. Your child is not only a soul with their own journey, they are a soul placed beside yours, so that both of you may awaken together. We often think of parenting as a one-way street we guide. We teach, we protect. And yes, that is part of it. But sometimes, in the stillness between lessons and rules, your child offers something back. A question that stirs your own doubt, a look that softens your armor, a moment of vulnerability that meets something buried in your chest. And without realizing it, you're no longer just parenting, you're awakening. Awakening doesn't always come through meditation cushions or quiet retreats. Sometimes it comes in the form of a child who challenges your need to be in control, or who loves you in a way you don't fully understand. Sometimes it comes when you fail, when your temper flares, or your patience gives out, and suddenly you're face to face with a version of yourself you thought you'd outgrown. That moment, too, is sacred. It is not failure. It is the soul tapping on the door, saying, "There's more here for you to see." In Buddhism, there is no awakening without awareness. And awareness begins with seeing things as they truly are not, as we wish them to be. So when your child reflects your impatience, or reminds you of your old grief, or acts out your fears, you are not being punished. You are being invited. Invited to see not only your child more clearly, but yourself. This shift is profound. It changes how we parent. But more than that, it changes how we relate to life. Our child becomes a guide, not in the traditional sense, but in the spiritual one. They lead us back to our own heart. They ask us to slow down, to listen, to soften the parts of us that have been hardened by time. They don't always do it gently, but they do it honestly. And honesty, in the spiritual path, is a kind of medicine. So the next time your child unsettles something in you, pause. Not to correct them, but to meet yourself. Ask what part of me is being called forward right now. That single moment of inquiry can shift everything. It opens a door, not just between you and your child, but between you and your own forgotten self. There's a quiet moment, often unnoticed, when your child's arrival doesn't just bring new life into the family, it stirs old energy. Sometimes it shows up as joy. Sometimes as tension you can't quite explain. But beneath it all, something ancient begins to move. In Buddhist understanding, karma is not only what we carry, it is what we awaken in others. And the arrival of a child can awaken karma in the parent that has long been asleep, buried under routines, responsibilities, and years of silence. Think back to when your child entered your life. Did it happen during a time of peace or a time of chaos? Were you prepared or overwhelmed? These questions aren't just about circumstance. They're about energy. Because your child didn't arrive randomly. Their soul chose that precise moment for a reason. And that reason often involves you. In the spiritual tradition, karma isn't fixed. It moves. It breathes. And it often waits for the right moment to rise. That moment may come when your child is born, and suddenly you find yourself feeling things you haven't felt in years, a kind of longing, or restlessness, or even grief. You might cry for no reason, or feel strangely reflective. That's not weakness. That's awakening. The karmic cycle within you has been stirred, and it's not always emotional. Sometimes it shows up in thoughts. You begin to question the life you've built, the choices you've made. You wonder who you were before you became a parent. You feel, for the first time in a long while, that something inside you wants to be seen. This is the child's karmic presence, acting not only in their own life, but in yours. When their soul enters, it brings the potential for movement not just forward, but inward. You are invited to look not just at them, but through them at yourself. Their challenges become your mirror, their fears, your old echoes, their quiet wisdom, your forgotten truth. The child's karma touches the family's karma, and in that moment, cycles that have been locked for generations may begin to open. This isn't always easy, but it is sacred because it means healing is near. When a child's presence shakes something loose in the parent, it's not to cause harm. It's to bring clarity. It's the soul's way of saying, now is the time. The time to feel what was once ignored, to speak what was once silenced, to forgive what was never named. So if your child's arrival brought more than joy, if it also brought deep questioning, restlessness, or even pain, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are being moved by something older than memory. And that movement is a chance to rewrite the story. If this speaks to your experience, I invite you to share what changed for you when your child was born. What old patterns surfaced? What part of yourself woke up? After the stirrings of karma begin to awaken within us, after the child's presence opens old doors and forgotten echoes, what comes next is not control, but attention. And not the kind of attention that rushes to correct, fix, or define. No. The kind of attention we're invited to give our children now is something quieter, deeper in attention that watches without judgment, that listens without the need to solve. This is the essence of mindful parenting. And in Buddhist practice, it's the beginning of true seeing. So often, we are quick to label our children. She's too sensitive. He's stubborn. They're so quiet. These labels may seem harmless, even affectionate, but over time, they become walls, barriers that stop us from truly understanding who our child is beneath their behaviors. When we label, we stop looking, we stop wondering. And in doing so, we may miss the soul quietly asking to be seen, not categorized. But what happens when we observe instead gently, with curiosity, when we step back, not to disengage, but to make space? We begin to notice the rhythms of our child's inner world. Their moments of silence are no longer withdrawal, but perhaps reflection. Their outbursts are no longer tantrums, but unspoken overwhelm. Their questions are no longer too much, but the signs of a soul actively trying to make sense of this world. In Zen, there is a teaching. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. But sometimes, the teacher arrives as a child quiet, unruly, emotional, intense. And our task is not to teach them first, but to learn how to see them. And to see them, we must first be present, not distracted, not reactive, not hurried, just here. This presence creates a new kind of relationship, one where the child feels safe not just to succeed, but to stumble, not just to behave, but to feel. They begin to sense that they are not being managed, they are being met. And in being met, something opens, trust deepens, communication softens, karma begins to loosen. This doesn't mean we let go of structure or discipline, but we do let go of the illusion that our job is to mold. Instead, we hold, we witness, we remain curious. And in that space, our children begin to show us who they really are, not who we imagine them to be. So the next time your child does something that surprises you, pause. Don't label. Don't fix. Just watch. Ask quietly within yourself, what is this moment asking me to see? That simple question is the doorway to intuitive parenting. It shifts the energy from power to presence, from tension to trust. If this reflection speaks to your journey as a parent or grandparent, I invite you to share a moment when you paused and truly saw your child not for what they did, but for who they were. As the years pass and the seasons change, we often look back on our parenting journey and ask ourselves, did I do enough? Did I guide them well? Did I love them right? These are honest questions, born from love. But sometimes they carry a quiet misunderstanding. That we were meant to shape our children like clay. That we had to get it exactly right. That their growth depended entirely on our direction. But in the wisdom of karma, the truth is gentler and more humbling. You were never meant to mold your child into someone. You were meant to protect the karmic thread they came to walk. This doesn't mean you step away. Quite the opposite. It means you walk beside them, not to steer their every step, but to honor the the deep reason they came. Every soul arrives with a blueprint, an invisible story, made of unfinished lessons, ancestral echoes, and spiritual vows. You may not know all the chapters, but you were chosen to witness this one. And your presence, more than your plans, is what helps them walk it well. Too often, we try to save our children from pain, uncertainty, or failure. We mean well, but in doing so, we sometimes interrupt the very path their soul needs. Karma is not always comfortable. It is not always peaceful, but it is always purposeful. And your child's challenges, those things you wish you could erase, may be the very places where their transformation begins. This is the deeper calling of parenthood, not to prevent hardship, but to hold space during it, to be the steady presence when things fall apart, to offer warmth when they feel unseen, and to whisper softly, "Again and again I see you. I trust your path." There will be moments when you won't understand your child, times when their choices make no sense, when their pain feels too big, or when their silence builds walls you cannot cross. And still you stay, not as the fixer, but as the one who protects the sacred unfolding of their soul. In Buddhism, we are reminded again and again, the path is not linear. It spirals, it circles, it deepens with time. Your child's karmic journey may not look like yours, but it is no less holy. So today, if you're questioning yourself, if you wonder whether you've done enough, please know this: your love, your presence, your effort to understand instead of control, those are not small things. Those are everything. You were never asked to be perfect, only present. You were never asked to carry their karma, only to honor it. Perhaps now, you can see your child not as someone to shape, but as someone who helps shape you. Their presence is not an accident. Their timing was not random. And their soul did not arrive empty. They came carrying echoes of lessons, of healing, of truth. And so did you. Parenting, in this deeper light, becomes less about control and more about compassion, less about answers and more about presence. And in that presence, healing begins not just for your child, but for you. Thank you for walking this path with me. If this journey has touched something in your heart, I invite you to stay right here with Awakening Insights. Subscribe, reflect, share your story in the comments. Let this be a space where your experience is honored, your questions are safe, and your soul is seen. We're not just learning about parenting. We're remembering what it means to love with depth,